People often talk about price, but the real story of owning 3000 XRP begins with understanding what it represents. Most holders see it as a token, a number in a wallet, yet what they really own is a share of a movement that is redefining how money moves across borders. Ripple's technology was not built to follow hype cycles or compete with speculative assets. It was built to solve friction in global payments, something that has frustrated the financial world for decades. When a transfer from one country to another takes days and costs a fortune in fees, that is inefficiency waiting to be fixed. XRP was designed to close that gap by creating a neutral bridge for value. To grasp the truth about owning this asset, you have to look at how financial infrastructure actually works. Every payment system in the world runs on messaging standards. Banks rely on a series of confirmations, checks, and correspondent relationships. That model was created in the 1970s, and it still dominates. Ripple saw that problem and developed a faster, interoperable network that could move liquidity instantly between institutions. XRP is the settlement layer of that system. It is not about gambling on charts. It is about providing a tool that can transfer value in seconds with predictable cost. When you hold 3000 XRP, you are connected to that story of efficiency. Ripple has spent years establishing partnerships with regulated financial institutions, not just startups. Companies such as Tranglo, SBI Remit, and numerous remittance providers in Asia and Europe are already using or testing its technology. Each of these corridors handles real-world payments for businesses and families who need to send money abroad. This is where digital assets prove their worth. Every successful transaction shows that blockchain is not limited to theory. It can integrate into the systems that move billions of dollars daily. That is why the project continues to attract attention from policymakers and banks that value compliance. Regulation is another part of this journey that most people overlook. The SEC case, the MiCA framework in Europe, and the policy work in Asia all shape how blockchain fits into finance. Ripple's willingness to operate transparently has made it one of the few digital asset companies that regularly interacts with governments and regulators. That does not guarantee outcomes or prices, but it shows maturity. The market is shifting from speculation toward legitimacy. When digital assets align with law and oversight, they move closer to real adoption. For a holder, that means the narrative is changing from if to when. Beyond legal clarity, there is a technical evolution unfolding quietly. Payment networks worldwide are adopting the ISO 2022 standard, a data-rich format that enables faster and more informative financial messaging. XRP already complies with this structure, which positions it to connect seamlessly with the systems that banks and central banks are now building. The alignment with global standards is not accidental. Ripple designed its technology to fit where finance was heading rather than where it was. That foresight is part of what gives the network staying power. Another element of this story is the psychology of long-term conviction. Holding an asset like XRP through uncertainty requires understanding why it exists. It is easy to be distracted by daily fluctuations, but the people who study the fundamentals see a longer timeline. They know that adoption curves in technology often begin invisibly. The internet, mobile banking, and contactless payments all started as experiments before they became necessities. Blockchain is following the same path. The infrastructure is being built slowly until one day it simply becomes normal. The concept of on-demand liquidity, Ripple's system that uses XRP to settle international transfers, illustrates this shift perfectly. Instead of pre-funding accounts around the world, financial institutions can source liquidity instantly when a transaction is made. This model reduces costs and unlocks capital that would otherwise sit idle. That is a real-world solution to a real-world problem. It is not marketing language. It is an operational upgrade. The use of a digital asset in that process transforms blockchain from speculation into utility. Every time a corridor goes live, it adds to a global network effect. Liquidity attracts liquidity. The more participants join, the smoother and cheaper transactions become. Over time, this could redefine how small businesses pay suppliers, how remittance companies move funds, and how banks manage cross-border settlements. The important part for viewers to grasp is that this transformation does not happen overnight. It happens quietly through pilots, compliance testing, and gradual trust building between institutions. Ripple has been in that phase for years, focusing on real usage rather than loud promises. When you hear the phrase, "the truth about owning 3000 XRP," it is not about a secret or a prediction. It is about realizing that you are witnessing the early adoption stage of a technology that addresses a century-old inefficiency. The number 3000 is symbolic because it shows that ownership in the digital era is accessible. You do not need to be a bank or a venture fund to participate in the evolution of money. Anyone who learns, researches, and acts responsibly can take part. That democratization of finance is one of the most profound outcomes of blockchain. Consider how many technologies started small before reshaping the world. The first emails, the first online payments, the first smartphones, all were dismissed until they became impossible to live without. Digital assets will follow a similar trajectory, moving from curiosity to infrastructure. Owning a measured amount of XRP is not about trying to get rich quickly. It is about being aware of the direction of innovation. The value lies in understanding how a tool built for settlement can enable faster, more inclusive global commerce. It is also important to recognize the broader landscape. Other blockchains are solving different problems. Ethereum focuses on decentralized applications, Bitcoin on scarcity and store of value, Stellar on micropayments. XRP's niche is interoperability and liquidity between currencies. Every ecosystem fills a gap, and together they build a more efficient digital economy. Ripple's advantage lies in its focus on compliance and institutional collaboration. That makes it a realistic bridge between traditional finance and blockchain networks. This context gives ownership meaning beyond numbers. 3,000 XRP represents a front row seat to an experiment in global coordination. The world's central banks are studying digital currencies, and many are exploring ways to interconnect them. The Bank for International Settlements has published research on multi-CBDC platforms, noting the need for neutral assets that can bridge diverse systems. Ripple's technology fits naturally into that conversation. Whether XRP itself becomes the bridge or not, its architecture demonstrates how such a system could work. That educational impact is part of its legacy. Owning any digital asset responsibly also requires balance and caution. Blockchain is still developing, and markets remain volatile. The correct approach is not to expect guarantees, but to understand potential. Research, diversification, and secure storage are key. The excitement around utility should never replace good risk management. That awareness separates informed participants from gamblers. Education is the foundation of sustainable growth in this space, and that is what channels like Crypto Equation aim to provide. For many people, the idea that technology could reshape money still feels abstract, but when you break it down, it becomes clear. Money is information, and the world is moving toward faster information exchange. Blockchain simply ensures that the information of value transfer is verified and immutable. XRP is one of the tools that make that verification instant across borders. The power lies in speed and certainty. That is the shift happening quietly as governments and corporations test blockchain-based settlement behind the scenes. The unbelievable part of owning 3,000 XRP is realizing how early we still are. Less than 2 decades ago, digital payments were limited to card networks. Today, instant payments are possible within countries. The next step is instant payments between countries, and that is exactly where Ripple's model fits. The rails are being built now. When they are complete, users will not even think about the underlying asset that makes it possible. They will simply enjoy frictionless transfers. The people who studied and understood this early will recognize it when it arrives. This phase of development requires patience. Real-world adoption follows regulation, and regulation follows understanding. That process takes time. Governments must ensure consumer protection, financial stability, and anti-money laundering controls. Ripple's consistent collaboration with regulators shows it understands this. They are not trying to bypass the system, they are trying to modernize it. That cooperative approach is what distinguishes serious projects from short-lived trends. Ultimately, the truth about owning 3,000 XRP is that it connects you to a vision larger than speculation. It is about witnessing the merging of old and new infrastructures. It is about technology finding its rightful place in the backbone of finance. Whether the price rises or falls in the short term is secondary to the broader story of transformation. The real question is how prepared we are for a world where value moves as easily as information. Ripple's work is one path toward that reality, and XRP is its engine of settlement. The world of finance is standing at the edge of a transformation that few people truly grasp. Everything we understand about value transfer, from salaries to savings, is being rewritten by technology that was once considered impossible. The bridge between digital assets and traditional money is forming, and Ripple's work sits within that evolution. Whether it is XRP, another token, or future digital currencies created by governments, the concept is the same: speed, transparency, and inclusion. When we talk about the future of global payments, we are talking about systems that can move value with the same efficiency as data. That is the future being built piece by piece through research, regulation, and cooperation. Understanding that process is what makes ownership of any early technology meaningful. It connects us to progress itself. Every few decades, humanity upgrades its financial language. We move from gold to paper, from paper to electronic entries, and now from electronic entries to programmable value. The next decade will be remembered as the decade of tokenization. Stocks, bonds, real estate, and currencies will all be represented by digital tokens that can move instantly between networks. Ripple's technology demonstrates how that movement can be trusted and verified. It allows different institutions to talk to each other, even if they use different ledgers. That interoperability is what the global system has always needed. 3000 XRP becomes symbolic here, representing participation in that learning curve, a reminder that innovation starts with curiosity. The integration of blockchain with banking systems is not science fiction anymore. Projects across Europe, Asia, and the Americas are exploring how to connect central bank digital currencies to private networks. The goal is to create a world where payments can be instant without sacrificing compliance or oversight. That requires collaboration, and Ripple has been among the companies invited to those conversations because of its technical maturity. The lessons from those collaborations help shape the policies that will define how all digital assets operate. The transformation may seem slow, but slow is often sustainable. The financial world cannot change overnight. It changes through pilots, audits, and incremental trust. Every corridor that succeeds adds one more layer of confidence to the idea that blockchain can carry the weight of real economies. The most powerful force behind this movement is education. When people understand technology, fear gives way to clarity. That is why channels like Crypto Equation exist, to translate complex systems into stories that make sense. Blockchain is not about speculation, it is about evolution. It is about connecting billions of people to financial systems that were once closed or inefficient. In that sense, holding and studying a technology like XRP is an act of curiosity, not greed. It is participation in learning how the next generation of money could work. Think about the global scale of value transfer today. Migrant workers sending wages home, corporations paying suppliers across continents, banks clearing international trades. All of it depends on legacy rails that take time and cost money. Now imagine a future where those transfers happen instantly, verified by code, and settled in seconds. That is the vision being tested right now. It will take regulation, security, and careful rollout, but the direction is inevitable. As data flows without borders, value will too. Ripple's approach to this challenge has always been to cooperate rather than disrupt. They work within existing rules, helping institutions modernize rather than replace them. This cooperative stance is what sets apart technologies that endure from those that fade. In any industry, evolution beats revolution because it brings everyone along. Ripple's focus on compliance, partnerships, and transparency ensures that its innovations can integrate into the system without breaking it. That is why policymakers listen. It is also why understanding this story is more important than predicting a price. The next few years will likely define which digital assets become utilities and which remain experiments. The ones that survive will be those that solve real problems, not those that generate temporary excitement. XRP's potential lies in settlement, efficiency, and bridging value between platforms. Even if its role changes as the industry matures, its early contributions to interoperability will remain part of financial history. It showed that blockchain could be used by institutions responsibly. That precedent will influence how other projects design their systems. The emotional side of this journey cannot be ignored either. Every technological wave comes with disbelief. There were skeptics when credit cards were introduced, when online banking emerged, and when contactless payments appeared. Each time, practicality won. The same will happen here. People resist what they do not yet understand, but once convenience becomes visible, adoption feels natural. The early adopters become educators simply by example. Owning a small amount of a digital asset and understanding its purpose is often enough to inspire others to learn. That shared learning accelerates change more than any corporate partnership ever could. There is also a generational dimension. Younger populations are growing up in a world where digital value is normal. To them, using a token to send money feels no stranger than sending a message online. As this generation begins to work, save, and invest, their expectations will shape the products banks offer. Instant settlement will become a baseline demand, not a luxury. The infrastructure that supports that expectation is being tested today, and Ripple is one of the players building the blueprint. The fascinating part of this transformation is that it happens invisibly. One day, the systems will connect, and users will barely notice the change. Money will move in seconds, and no one will ask how it works. Yet behind that simplicity will be years of development by engineers, policymakers, and early believers who studied and prepared for this moment. Understanding that cycle is what makes learning about XRP valuable. It is a lesson in how innovation matures, how regulation interacts with technology, and how patience becomes the rarest but most rewarding skill. As the decade unfolds, the words blockchain and finance will no longer sound like opposites. They will describe the same system. Tokenized money will flow through networks governed by transparent rules. Instant settlement will reduce costs and open trade opportunities for millions. Whether you hold XRP, study it, or simply watch from the sidelines, witnessing this transition is part of financial history. It shows what happens when human ingenuity meets institutional will. It shows that technology can evolve responsibly when guided by collaboration rather than chaos. The unbelievable truth about owning 3000 XRP is not that it will make someone rich overnight. It is that it represents awareness. Awareness of change before it becomes obvious. Awareness of how ideas move from imagination to reality. It reminds us that progress does not need permission, it needs understanding. The value lies not only in the token itself, but in the knowledge that comes with studying it. That knowledge will matter in every future career, business, and investment decision, because the principles of blockchain, transparency, efficiency, and trust through code are becoming part of every industry. The coming years will demand people who can bridge the gap between finance and technology, between regulators and innovators. Learning about assets like XRP prepares people for that world. It teaches how liquidity works, why compliance matters, and how digital systems communicate. It is education through participation. Even if the market changes direction, the understanding gained stays forever. Knowledge compounds more reliably than any asset. When future generations look back, they will see this period as the time when finance began its digital rewrite. They will see early participants not as gamblers, but as witnesses to transformation. The story of XRP, Ripple, and the broader blockchain movement is the story of how humanity learned to move value as easily as information. It is about solving problems that have existed for decades through innovation rather than ideology. It is about turning complexity into clarity. So the truth about owning 3000 XRP is not hidden at all. It is right here, in the patience to learn, in the curiosity to explore, and in the recognition that technology evolves before the crowd catches on. It is a reminder that being early is rarely comfortable, but often meaningful, and as the rails of the new economy continue to connect, those who took the time to understand will know they were part of something extraordinary from the very beginning. Ultimately, the truth about owning 3000 XRP is that it connects you to a vision larger than speculation. It is about witnessing the merging of old and new infrastructures. It is about technology finding its rightful place in the backbone of finance. Whether the price rises or falls in the short term is secondary to the broader story of transformation. The real question is how prepared we are for a world where value moves as easily as information. Ripple's work is one path toward that reality, and XRP is its engine of settlement.